is BBC Radio 5 Live.
It's 6 minutes past 9. We're going to speak to Andy Warshaw from Inside World Football. Good morning. Trevor Sinclair is back. Hi, Trevor. We're going to talk to Joel in Bedford. Hi, and Paul in Manchester. Good morning. Mark in Bristol. Welcome. Georgie's here. We're talking to everybody and you, hopefully, about this. Would you support a Christmas World Cup? That seems to be the scenario. A FIFA task force has recommended the 2022 World Cup in Qatar will take place in November and December. Morning, everyone. Joel, Paul, Mark. Joel, what do you think? Joel in Bedford.
Hi, Nicky. This is just the continuation of an argument that takes place every 2 years in the Premier League as well when the Africa Cup of Nations comes up. This is just a bigger scale. Mm-hmm. Our yardstick is what's good for the Premier League. And it's not even what's good for the fans. It's what's good for the broadcasters and their schedules. But it is plainly ridiculous. We cannot live in an integrated world, a global village, as we would like to call it, at our convenience, and the only yardstick that matters are the yardsticks of European federations. This is our biggest problem, and it reflects the way we look at the world in just about, not only football, in just about everything.
But there's every single nation on earth represented in European football. It's the fulcrum of it all. It's the hub of it all, isn't it? Or is that very European-centric view?
It's a very Eurocentric view. The sun has set on the empire. And the issue is that we love Yahya Toure to be at Manchester City. We love Drogba to be at Chelsea. But when the Africa Cup of Nations come, then we want to have a collective moan and groan.
Interesting point. Paul in Manchester, no different from the African Cup of Nations, says Joel, very articulately, but just on a bigger scale. Paul?
I totally disagree. This will destroy world football, and I'll tell you why. I've got many reasons. Migrant workers, about 400 have been killed so far in building the infrastructure. There's a report out yesterday that 4,000 will die during the building of all these Qatar stadiums. Migrant workers are paid a pittance. Some of them are there. They cannot escape now once they're in Qatar. If Israel qualifies for the World Cup, no one on an Israeli passport is allowed into Qatar. So Israel will be banned from that World Cup.
Gays are criminal. Should be banned in the first place. You did it.
No. Thank you. You just proved your point then. Thank you very much. Gays are criminalised. You're not allowed to drink in public or kiss in public. Michael Garcia has produced a report giving all the corruption that's been happening in Qatar. The European leagues will suffer because these players will come back on the 23rd of December. What's going to happen then? They're going to be injured. They won't be able to play on the Christmas fixtures. The whole thing is absolute disgrace. It should be played in the United States and Australia. Qatar have never qualified for a World Cup. They never will do. But the whole thing is morally corrupt and wrong.
Mark in Bristol.
Well, he said everything. He said everything spot on. The point is, he's saying that it's a European problem. It's not a European problem at all. The World Cup has always been held during the summer, and everyone has built around the fact that it's been held during the summer. They have to conform to when the World Cup is. It's got nothing to do with that. When we bid for the World Cup, the World Cup is a summer. Now they're changing the goalposts. You can't do that. Everyone needs to bid again. There's no way Qatar can take the World Cup. No way. And it's all down to Sepp Blatter. Sepp Blatter hates England. And it's because England created football in its present format. And that's the nub of it.
Andrew Warshaw, from Inside World Football. What are the consequences? What are the ramifications? Morning, Andrew. What are the ramifications of this?
Good morning. Well, the ramifications will be huge. I mean, I've listened to the listeners already intently, and some of the points are excellent. But don't forget, this is not about whether or not Qatar stages the World Cup. They won the vote. Some people might not think they should have done.
False pretenses?
There are obviously people who feel that. Now, but this is all about when the tournament is going to be staged. Clearly, what is, I suggest, pretty alarming is the fact that this decision to play in winter or to switch to winter has been taken over 4 years since the vote took place. Now, that in itself, I think, raises questions. But in terms of the ramifications, well, let me quote you what Howard May Nichols said. And just for the listeners, I'll explain who he is. Howard May Nichols is the Chilean official who assessed all the bidding countries for both 218 and 222. He was head of FIFA's technical inspection team. And he said that to stage the tournament, he believes to stage the tournament in November, December, will disrupt more than 50 leagues, not just in Europe, but all over the world. And not just that. You are changing an entire culture for the fans. Stopping the leagues in October, which you'd have to do for preparation purposes, probably, and starting again in January after Christmas and the New Year, would lose a lot of atmosphere. And not only that, players would come back from the World Cup, in Europe at least, at the most critical time of the season. So there are a number of difficulties. However, there are always two sides to this. And it has been felt that to play in the middle of the Gulf summer with temperatures over 50 degrees, potentially, could be a health risk, not just to players, but also to fans. One of the issues that has been talked about considerably over the last few weeks is the proposal of the leagues and clubs in Europe, most of the leagues and over 200 clubs, to have a compromise solution, to play the tournament in May. May the 5th to June the 4th is what I understand is what they put forward at today's meeting in Doha.
Ramadan.
Originally they suggested April, May. Now that you're right, that would have clashed with Ramadan. But apparently May the 5th to June the 4th doesn't clash with Ramadan and would have been a reasonable compromise. Well, one can only assume...
Okay, I want to bring...
Can I say something?
Is that Mark? Sorry, Paul.
It's Paul.
Paul,
can I just say something? That people like this are just glossing over so many issues. Just on one point. How can we morally accept that these migrant workers who are building these stadiums are losing their lives, being treated as slaves, and yet we just say, oh, yeah, these are just, we're just glossing over it.
The discrimination against gay people as well. I mean, there's all those issues about human rights.
All those issues, but none of these people seem to be coming out and saying that. It's an absolute disgrace.
People were saying it at the time.
I agree that gay people have the right to play football, to be fans, and we have to defend the right of every gay person to be gay. So my issue is not this. My issue is...
I'm sorry, your issue, you've already mentioned that you don't think Israel should be there.
Of course not. We banned South Africa.
Well, okay, listen, that
just shows you where you're coming from.
That's a lot of phone-ins, and it's I've had them, believe you me. Listen, moving on from that, not for reasons of censorship, but for reasons of focusing on the issue. Trevor Sinclair, you're not happy, Trevor, are you?
No, I'm not. I think, we've listened to the callers there, and the second caller, I think especially, I'm not sure his name, sorry about that. I think when he brings up the conditions of the workers, the migrants that are working there, I think the integrity of FIFA, the World Cup, has gone down the pan. It's for me, it is a disgrace. And even if you start talking about April, May, June, it's 45 degrees. I've lived out there. There's absolutely no way you could play football in them conditions. Not just for the players. If you played in indoor stadiums, the infrastructure to get to games, come away from games. If fans were drinking, if they ended up falling asleep in the street, they could die. It's as simple as that. The health and safety issues wouldn't allow a World Cup to be played in the Middle East in the summer, especially Qatar in that region because it is so hot. But I think really, we're listening to the callers. We're talking about gay rights. We're talking about, we're not talking about a democracy country. We're talking about a country where migrant workers are dying every day. And I think for me, it's a huge, huge stain on FIFA and the World Cup, and it's a big shame.
Given all that you've outlined, though, Trevor, and the fact that in the ideal world you can't play in those conditions, this is, like it or not, the only solution.
Well, it's for me, it really does dampen, the excitement that will be for that year because, you want to go into these competitions and you want to see teams going into these competitions thinking great stadiums, superb atmosphere, so much excitement. And for me, that'll go down. If you know that thousands and thousands of people have died building these stadiums, I just think it's going to take the gloss off it. And it could stay in the World Cup forever.
Angela in Pembrokeshire. Good morning, Angela.
Hello, Nicky.
Do you think Qatar should have been given the World Cup in the first place? But then, of course, since it has, we are where we are. How are we going to deal with it? It's not going to be taken away from them, is it?
Well, personally, I don't even think they should have been up for consideration. It's not a traditional footballing nation, and it hasn't just suddenly got temperatures this high at that time of year when the World Cup is always played. That was known when it was put up. They should have just said, thank you very much, but unfortunately we can't consider you because we can't play football in those temperatures. And I agree with what Trevor just said, that with all that's going on with the migrant workers, it's a stain that's going to be on the World Cup even before the ball is kicked. And it's 7 years away. There are countries like England, France, other European countries, even South Africa again.
7 years to plan for it, Angela.
Got the stadia and the infrastructure.
There's 7 years to plan for it, Angela.
And also, I think because of Qatar not being a traditionally footballing nation,
as you said,
the competition will be diluted because they will only be taking part because they're hosts.
OK, thank you. Sam in Cambridge, let me throw that to you that I suggested there to Angela. There's 7 years to plan for this, Sam.
Good morning, Nicky.
Morning, Sam. 7 years. I keep saying it like I've got the 7-year itch going on here. Go on.
I understand. Now, this is what really annoys me and splits me, basically, because we are at this status quo when you just said, well, it's 7 years, it's wrong, but let's move forward. And in my opinion, that's wrong, because if Qatar, at the time of tender, said, and Blatter said, that this World Cup is going to be played in the winter, would have Qatar got it? And everybody will tell you no. So they started a procedure knowing that down the line, and that's why it took 4 years, by putting one way or another, whether it's putting arms around people or by different means, they will get people to agree. And this is really where it's wrong. And if something is wrong in principle, it shouldn't be continued. And it hurts me because I come from that region, and you would like to see these countries doing the World Cup, but you need to see them winning it fairly and squarely.
Okay.
There's a lot of corruption gone in there, and it shouldn't be allowed. That's the difficulty in me accepting it in December, not because of European football, not because of gays, not because of anything. Is that the principle stinks.
OK, the principle stinks. People aren't happy. Well, some people say, look, we should stop being so Eurocentric just before we get the travel and regroup. It is a little bit like, George, isn't it? A company bidding for a rail franchise and with all sorts of recommendations, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then announcing, once they've got the bid, that there's no seats, it's going to be standing room only. Talk about moving the goalposts.
But that's the whole problem. It's the goalpost moving, and I think the first caller making the comment about the Africa Cup of Nations, it's just like that on a bigger scale. But it's the fact that the scale is so much bigger that's the problem in the first place. And on the Africa Cup of Nations, we know the rules as Premier League clubs. When they go and sign African players, they know when they sign those contracts that they're going to be without those players for a month. You can't just come along and say, oh, by the way, now we're going to take all the other top players from every other country for that World Cup because we're going to move that as well.
It's 9:20. Here's the question. Would you support a Christmas World Cup?
On 5 Live.
Let's bring in Liz in Bury and Philip in Hertfordshire. Trevor's with us for a wee while longer. George too. I think George's got an important point. We'll bring that in just a second. We'll knit it in, George. Liz, good morning. Philip, hello. Liz, you go first.
Right. I think this is just all down to Blatter. He wanted this and therefore he's going to get it. This all happened 4 years ago. You can't tell me that these kind of decisions have taken 4 years. In fact, I think you even had a phone in as soon as the decision was made, and people were ringing in saying how ridiculous it was then. So Blatter wants this. Blatter is going to get it. He's pulled how many strings here, there and everywhere to get it, and it is going to happen. It doesn't matter what anybody says. He wants it, therefore he's going to get it. The FA and all the other people are just going to turn over and say, rub my tummy, like they normally do with Blatter. Nobody seems to be able to get rid of the man. He's corrupt to his core, and he just does what he wants with everybody and everybody's money.
He's like Rasputin. There's no putting him down. He keeps coming back.
There is no putting him down.
Right.
But it's wrong, and he's just getting away with it, and nobody seems to be able or willing to do anything about it.
Philip.
Hi, yes, I've got some more general points on basically football. I mean, taking away the corruption element of this World Cup bid. When is a North African or Middle Eastern country going to be able to play a World Cup? Just because of where they are geographically in the world. I mean, I can think of Egypt, probably a very good place to have a World Cup. Morocco, they had the Super Cup there, didn't they, this year in Marrakesh?
Okay.
You know, you could rule out all of these countries from pretty much April through to September, because I've been to sort of these countries on holiday in the summer, and it's horrendously hot. When are they supposed to play a World Cup? Because if that's the case, they're never going to be able to play one because they can't play in the summer months.
But they haven't got the infrastructure anyway to do those things. They haven't got the money to do it. They haven't got anything like the infrastructure or anything to do those things. So surely they shouldn't be allowed to do it.
I agree, Liz.
Trevor?
No, I agree with Liz. You know, we're talking about Qatar, and a lot of the lads, the footballers that do a lot of punditry work over there. I've never been, but they say it's like a village. There's literally nothing there. You know, it's a new place where there's all new buildings and everything's being built for the World Cup. But I think, you know, I definitely agree with Liz. It comes down to morals, and I think the fact that Sepp Blatter wanted this World Cup in Qatar means that's why it got through and picked out of the group of nations that made the bid for the World Cup. But I think in general, you know, we all know the saying, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Well, this is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 wrongs, and somebody's got to step in. Somebody's got to step in and say this.
Let me step in.
Enough. I'd like to think Richard Scudamore is not going to agree, and it's going to come to some kind of head.
He's not going to take this lying down. Let me just step in. Strong allegations we just heard about Mr. Blatter personally. I have to say he's not here to defend himself on that, and there's no allegations, there's no evidence specifically that he is guilty of the things he was accused on in the last few moments.
It'd be a great your call if he was.
If he was, he's welcome to come on. He's welcome to phone us. George, what about the option of just carrying on?
Well, this was Rachel's option, wasn't it, during Five Live Breakfast, which personally I think is an absolute non-starter. But it seems quite a lot of.
It's the Six Nations option.
Yeah, they do it in the County Cricket Championship, but that's different, of course, because England's players are centrally contracted, so that the counties aren't losing out that much financially, and that the Premiership sides carry on during the Six Nations as well. That goes back to the initial question I guess we're posing here, isn't it, on your call? Do we support this Christmas World Cup? And if we do, how do we? Because if we do carry on regard and to say, all right, you have your World Cup, we'll carry on with the Premier League, you're basically watering down a product which TV companies have just paid, upwards of £5 billion to screen. You're basically saying for 4 weeks or so, we will fill that with reserve and academy players. Now, that has to be a non-starter for a lot of different reasons.
And it's not a level playing field, because the teams with the most representative players in the World Cup will be the ones, international players.
Well, most Premier League teams now
disproportionately suffer.
Have international, and it's not just about England.
Championship teams
as well, but it's not just about England. Say Liverpool losing Sturridge, Sterling, Henderson, Johnson. It's internationals right across the board. Every single team in the top flight, and as you say, top half of the Championship as well, would be affected by this.
Adnan's
Hi, Nicky. Can I come back in for a second?
Is that Philip?
It's Phil, yes. I just would like to make one point, because I would like to ask maybe some of the people on your panel there. Do they feel that a Middle Eastern or a North African country should ever host a World Cup?
Trevor Sinclair.
No, well, we were talking about a summer World Cup. The countries that are too hot, which, you know, Qatar is one of them. The UAE, I think, would be another. There's many countries in that area that are too hot, shouldn't be allowed to host the World Cup. But for some of the other countries, you know, that have got history in the competition, you know, Egypt, Morocco, things like that, maybe if, you know, it's to be a safe place at the moment, there has been a lot of trouble in Egypt. So I think you've got to look at each individual country at the time of tending for the bid. But
if it's too hot, it doesn't matter where that country is.
That's my point. It's too hot, absolutely. And these are some of the most passionate football countries in the world. Egypt, incredibly passionate in football. Iran, once again, very, you know, if things sort themselves out, looking long term into the future, football is so passionate in that part of the world. Maybe not in Qatar, but certainly other very hot sub-Saharan countries.
Yeah, it was.
When the bid goes in, it's for a winter bid.
Yeah, okay. Let me bring other calls in.
Yeah.
It was hot. It was hot in '82 in Seville. I remember it was at the Brazil-Scotland match. You see, Gordon was sweating away there. It was
he's factor 60.
Yeah. I mean, David Neri, after he scored that wonder goal, it wasn't a toe poke at all. Adnan in London, thank you very much indeed. Good morning. David's in Nottingham, and Mick is in South Yorkshire. Don't think we've heard from you, Mick, have we?
No, not yet.
You're on.
Right, well, as that last guy just said, if these other countries, Egypt and that, they would put a bid in based on it being a Winter World Cup. Qatar didn't do that. They put a bid in, well, some would say that they bought a World Cup based on a June-July World Cup, right? That, there's lots of passionate ski fans in Britain, but we'll never host a Winter Olympics because we don't get enough snow. Unfortunately, the countries that he's mentioned, because of the climatic conditions, which is not even Sepp Blatter's fault, it's unfortunate they can't have a June-July World Cup. So they would put a bid in based on, all right, we want the World Cup, but we're going to run it in November, and then people can decide. Well, that ain't what happened here.
Well, it's not Sepp Blatter's fault, but it's up to Blatter to say, hang on, no, you can't have this bid because it's too hot.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But what the point I want to make is the stadiums are being built and paid for by the blood of the migrant workers. The tournament has been bought and paid for by the Qatari royal family.
Allegedly. I'm not funding your legal fees, mate.
It's also going to be paid for by the destruction of the most important leagues in the world. And I don't mean the Premier League. I'm a Championship club fan. So it's Germany, France. What I would like to have now is for Platini and UEFA to grow a pair and say, we're not doing this. We are not playing at that time. And every European league pull out, and then there wouldn't be a World Cup.
Have it like the darts, George. A breakaway. There you are.
I wondered what you were going to say then. Boozy.
Boozy. Like David in Nottingham. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Nicky. Taking football around the world is obviously a very passionate thing. It's a good thing. The reason I called up is we never seem to hear this word legacy when it comes to football. If we take a leaf from the Olympic Movement's book, for example, I understand that right at the top of their list is the legacy that will be left as a result of hosting those sports, those tournaments. Something good for the place where it was hosted, and something good for the community. London 2012, for example. We don't hear that with football, do we? It's all about the money. And as for a Christmas World Cup final, I think Christmas is stressful enough for a lot of people.
I don't think the home nations fans need to be too worried about being stressed.
The concept of taking football around the world is of course that's good and right, but some things simply aren't realistic. Football, as a number of you callers have said today, football in those climatic conditions is a non-starter.
Okay, it's Ben Crosby versus Sepp Blatter. Let's get a final word from Trevor.
No, I think David makes a valid point there. The legacy we talked about 2012 and how much of a legacy the Olympics left for London and England. I believe that the stadiums are going to be taken apart and taken to developing countries to be used. So I think if there is a legacy, that's probably the only thing that I can think of. But it's a new country when it comes to football, Qatar. And, I don't think it's highly populated. So for me, there's not really going to be much of a legacy left, which is a big shame.
Thank you very much for your thoughts this morning. George is still with me. It's over to you. What do you think about this idea? 2022 Qatar Christmas World Cup, or in the lead up to Christmas, November, December, a final on the 23rd of December, yeah? Yeah?
Yes.
There can be some interesting conversations at home.
Well, somewhere, like I said before, I don't think England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland need to be concerning themselves too much with that at this point.
We shall see. It's hope springs eternal. It's 9:32.
5 Live, where football lives.
Qatar 2022 World Cup, November, December. Lots of people to talk to about this. Alan's in Belfast, Adnan's in London, and we've got Amy in Edinburgh, and we've got David, and we've got Tom Fletcher, one half of Bradford City Fans Podcast, Bantam's Banter. George is here. Think of the headlines, though. It's a gift for the headline, right? Christmas cracker, an early Christmas gift from the defence.
We just want it to be a special World Cup, and just hearing you talking about your memories of 82, we can all remember such special memories about World Cups. 86, Maradona, Toto Schillaci, Italia 90, Gaza, Lineker, 94 in the USA, Lechkov with his header for Bulgaria against Germany. These are
Bobby Moore's tackle.
Absolutely, going further back. All the special memories for football fans. All this in the build-up to 2022 already has just been negative. Argument. It's the World Cup. It is such a special thing. We've got to find a way for it to work, haven't we?
Alan in Belfast.
Morning.
Oh, come on.
Who's that?
Oh, hello.
Adnan.
Adnan.
I think Adnan wanted to go first.
Adnan, you go first. You've been actually fair play to you. Hands up.
Yes, mate.
You've been waiting.
That's why.
You've been waiting a while. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I thought he's maybe watching a football match.
I'm happy for Qatar, mate. I'm happy for Sepp Blatter for making the right decision. All your callers this morning made me laugh. One of them said, I can't have sex with my boyfriend in Qatar. I can't have sex with my girlfriend in Qatar. I can't drink alcohol in Qatar. Oh, the thousands of people are dying in Qatar building the World Cup venue. My God.
There's a lot of inference going on here.
Caremongering. All of these people. I don't understand why. This is, and one of them said Qatar is too poor. Qatar is one of the richest countries in the world. They're going to hold
Why the exploitation of all the migrant workers and the tragedies that have happened?
They're trying their best. They're trying their best. They are trying their best to do the best for the workers. It's a very tough environment to work in, yes, but they're trying their best. You cannot say that they're not trying. Yes, there are people dying. People die in in every big project. Only yesterday they were talking about that poor guy who died on the train underground that they're building now in London. I mean, it happens.
Adnan,
it happens everywhere.
Thank you very much. Alan, you were saying.
Yes, good morning. I think it seems to be that the view amongst people that are calling in is that the bidding process probably needs to be revisited and started again. I don't believe for a second that that'll happen. I think, the World Cup's going to be there and that's it. What sort of confused me is that in the statement that your guy, Richard, I think it was, that read out from Doha, he said that FIFA had the support of all of the 6 football confederations. Obviously, that includes UEFA. So that confused me, because you would have thought that if UEFA fully support it, they will have gone to all the big clubs and all the major leagues in Europe and asked them, because obviously UEFA represent, the leagues that make up the region or the confederation. So you would think that the leagues must have given some sort of indication that they would support it in the main. But at the end of the day, European clubs basically hold the power base in football. They make up the teams that have regularly won the World Cup over the years. So if they all decided collectively just not to go, nobody's holding them to ransom and make them go. It might not be ideal, but it sounds like it's going to be a shambles anyway. So if the big teams just didn't go and just let them get on with it and concentrated on their domestic leagues for that tournament, then I don't see what's the big deal.
What is the big deal? Let's bring in Tom.
Hello.
Tom Fletcher, one half of Bradford City's Fans Podcast, Bantam's Banter. Here's Rob Harris from the Associated Press, Tom, has said 2022 World Cup will boost lower league clubs, month without top-flight matches for fans to attend.
I think I probably agree with that. I mean, I just want to bring in what Alan said about what the big deal is. The big deal is that there's never been a World Cup in the Middle East. That's the big deal. I mean, I'm not totally with what Adnan's saying, where he's ranting on about people dying and all this, and the immigrants. I mean, all right, yeah, it's horrible, situations over there, the circumstances over there, the way they're building these stadiums. But there's never been a World Cup over there. Give them a chance. It's happened. It's going to happen. We've got to try and make the best of a bad situation. And yeah, for lower league clubs, it probably is going to be better for us. We're witnessing proper football down here. It's not all about the money. So it'll be interesting, and it's in 7 years' time. I mean, a lot of the players aren't going to be playing that are playing now aren't going to be playing this World Cup anyway. So let's just see what happens. And it's just like any normal job. If you go to work 9 to 5 every day, and all of a sudden 1 week we want you to work 8 till 2, you just get on with it. You do it. It's only been one season where we're going to play over winter. It's not. I don't think it's a big deal in that respect at all.
Mm. Amy, what do you think? Amy in Edinburgh.
Yeah, I mean, I've been over to Qatar a few times now. And it's incredible the amount they're spending on infrastructure in the city. It's true, they've got a long way to go to be as westernised as the likes of Dubai. But I think they need something like this to help them out. They're building the world's best stadiums, and if something does go wrong, they've got the most advanced hospitals in the whole world. With people saying that you can't drink over there, I mean, I went to plenty of nice bars when I was over in Qatar, and I just think they're going to put on a great show.
There's a sort of relaxation of the alcohol situation, isn't there?
It is, and you know what? Like, I know I'm not saying I'm the biggest football fan in the world. I'm not, but you'd be going over there, you're going to have a great time. They're going to put on a great show. Will relax the alcohol restrictions out there, and if not, you can go to the bars and you can get a drink. It's not going to be the end of the world.
Whatever happens, I hope that your own international team qualifies.
I doubt that, but
I don't know what they are. I'm just hoping. I'm hoping for your sake, because you sound like a very nice person. I don't know who you support, but I just hope that they're there. Georgie, this is going to. I mean, we've only just begun. This is going to be a hell of a row. Richard Scudamore is not happy.
We're talking about a 2022 World Cup, but just going back to a point made by I think the caller before last about why
Alan, yeah,
why there was support for from the 6 nations, UEFA supporting FIFA on this, and the European nations supporting it. There's a difference between liking it and supporting it. I mean, pulling out is not realistically an option. I know a lot of people would love them just to stick a couple of fingers up at FIFA and say, well, go and have your World Cup.
Sorry, George. Sorry, I don't know if I'm still...
Yes, you are, yeah.
Can I just ask why it's not an option?
Well, do you really think that would happen?
Well, that wasn't my question. My question was, why is it not an option?
Well, it's an option. I just think it's a non-starter of an option. I mean, in an ideal world like you, I say, yeah, why not? They've made such a mess of this FIFA. Why should we go and support them?
But if France and Germany and Spain and Italy and, God forbid, England and Scotland, hopefully, if all, and the Netherlands and all of those countries, if they all decide they're just not going to go, it wouldn't be a World Cup.
Well, why would they not go to a World Cup?
Well, because that's my point. I'm saying if they feel so strongly about when it's being held to disrupt their own domestic leagues. Do
you think the players feel so strongly? I think the players just want to play a World Cup.
And in this country, we're talking about the Premier League. Because most big generalisation there maybe, but most of the big stars of that World Cup will probably be playing in the Premier League, because in the next few years, that's where all the money is. Now, I know to somebody else's point earlier on.
Good point.
A lot of the players that are going to be playing in 7 years' time aren't playing now, or vice versa. The players that are playing now won't be playing in 7 years' time. So the likes of John Terry and all of those guys that were mentioned from Liverpool, Daniel Sturridge, they'll be coming towards the end of their career. So chances are they're not going to be playing. So we don't, but because the money's going to be in England, that's where all the big players are going to be, whether you like that or not. So it's really, we're talking about the English domestic league as opposed to the Spanish or the Italian or the German or whatever. Because a lot of these countries, I think Germany have a break in the winter anyway. So my point is basically straightforward. If everybody collectively feels so strongly that it shouldn't be allowed to disrupt their own domestic game, and that the goalposts have been moved, because they signed up to a Summer World Cup. If it's not going to be a Summer World Cup now, well, why did they just not go?
Why do they feel so strongly?
Because they don't want their own leagues disrupted.
Yeah, but it's 1 month. That's all it is. Yeah. It's 3 or 4 weeks over Christmas in 1 year. It's not happening every single year. Out of 4 years, that's all it is. It's nothing.
Well, it's 2 months, but they're talking about sort of, between mid to towards the end of November.
I don't know what the big deal is. It's just one. This is their job. They get paid millions of pounds worth of money, and they're asked just to pay for 1 year. They're asked to play just in winter.
How will you feel if you've got two, let's project into the future. You've got two tasty Bulgarians playing for Bradford City, and then right? Now stay with me on this.
Okay.
And they pick for the Bulgarian team, and off they go, and everything stops, and then they're both really badly injured. I mean, obviously that could happen domestically.
Yeah.
But and they're out, and then your team suffers. As a result of that.
Yeah, that's going to be the main issue. The main issue is the politics when it actually comes to it, of the Premier League managers getting involved and saying, look, it's in the middle of the season, we don't want you doing this play. That's going to be one contentious issue. But in the bigger picture of when it's going to be in the year, I don't see a problem whatsoever. And all these Premier League players in the near future just need to man up for 1 month and get on with it. Qatar have never had a World Cup. However it came about, be it dodgy or legit, forget about that. Just give them the opportunity to host one. Give them a chance. Never be in the Middle East. Let's not start saying segregating countries and continents. We're all it's a World Cup. It's all the world getting involved. Give them a chance. Give them a shot, and get his Premier League big stars to.
And book your summer holidays for December.
Yeah.
And Christmas for July. Michael in Wirral.
Oh, I've been itching to get in on this one.
Go on, Mike.
Go yourself, big man.
Yeah, well, I think what we're witnessing here are the death throes of the power of UEFA and the Southern American power bloc. And basically, what it is, I was listening to your call from Belfast, who made some great points. To tell you why the big leagues in Europe won't turn around and say that we're not going, it's because they can't afford to. I mean, I remember the day when Liverpool sold to the Americans and not to DIC. I'm sure every Manchester City fan can remember the day that, their club was bought. And PSG fans can remember when, they were brought out by that part of the world. And the new TV deal isn't a result of the fact that the Dog and Duck has got a screen up in the back room of the pub on a Sunday afternoon. We're taking the money from this part of the world. And in contrary to what one of your callers earlier on said about these not being traditional football nations, of course they are. I can remember watching, Kuwait back in the 1982 World Cup and seeing them walk off because they didn't like the fact that the goal was given against them. And we're doing more and more business with this part of the world. More and more club ownership is coming from this part of the world. And the TV deals are basically hugely inflated because football is mad out there. Now, you cannot take the money but not expect to cede power, not expect to cede influence. No matter how this process has come about, it's about inclusion and exclusion, and we're happy to take the money, but not cede any decision-making powers.
Interesting. Yeah. Very interesting. Was that Barry Davis? Yeah, I think it was.
It was.
Yeah.
Barry Davis, the art of commentary is lost. Don't get me started on co-summarisers. Barry Davis is one of the best.
Barry Davis is the king. I don't know if you watched The Jump recently with Davina, but he was commentating on that, and it was these celebrities doing. I mean, this is a bit of a diversion from what we're talking about. There was
quite a diversion.
There was these celebrities doing, Mike Tyndall and others and people like that doing, and Louis Spence doing ski jumps and so forth. And Barry Davis was the commentator, and he made it sound like the Winter Olympics.
He's imperious. He is imperious, and he's much lost. Commentators today are nothing compared to what they were. But anyway,
sans pareil, mate. Sans pareil. Nadia, was that not right?
No, I was just saying another example of our great memories.
You're right.
Of these competitions, because
You're right.
You remember bits of commentary.
Yeah, Maradona, the second goal. After the first one, of course, the second goal. Now you have to say that is magnificent.
Yep.
Archie Gemmell's goal against Holland.
What did Barry Davis say to that? I was watching Archie McPherson on Scottish television. I can't remember. I don't know about Barry. That I know there was someone screaming in the back. I think it was Bobby Charlton was a summariser in the background on the non-Scottish coverage. Nadia in Manchester. Sorry to keep you. What would you like to say?
I was listening to the gentleman. He said, we are happy to take the money from these Arabs, and yet, we're not happy when it comes to the policy making. And we've seen that with them buying all the football grounds in UK. But I'm just looking at the points, and one of the things that I'm looking at is footballers get a lot of money, and I wouldn't care less if they had to play at the moon or in extreme weather in the north where it's, or in the North Pole or the South Pole. So when they have a job, they've got to do it because they get a lot of money to be paid for it. I've listening to people saying about the weather. I think there are a lot of British and Americans living in these very extreme weather countries in the Middle East. So I don't think that can be a problem. And I think it's a very positive thing because especially with the Arab upspring, the young people, I've watched YouTubes, I've been to the Middle East, I've seen a lot of young Middle Eastern who want to, who want democracy. They're not going down the road of extremism like ISIS. They're very open-minded. And I think this will be very good for them to have a platform to engage. And I think football is one of the most beautiful thing which brings people together. It doesn't matter where you come from. When it comes to football, you're all very passionate and you love your team. And I think they need to be given an opportunity. But one of my concern is like one of the ladies said, is the ethics. I just feel football has become a big boys kind of, thing where there's a lot of corruption. It's all about money. Maybe that is something they should be looking into.
Okay, let me hear from... Thank you, Nadia. Ron in Southampton. Hello, Ron. Before we do hear from you, Tom, you made the point it's only a month. Georgie, I think you want to just counter that.
I'll tell you what. Let's move Wimbledon tennis.
Who's that? Is that Ron?
Yeah.
Okay, so hold that thought. Wait. Hold that thought. I just want to get this sorted out. Tom, you say it's only a month. Tom Fletcher.
Yeah.
Georgie.
Well, for a start, it's not a month, is it? It's at least 2 when you look at things either side. They're not
about showing it out. They're not about changing the format of the tournament.
Yeah, but they're not just going to play a Premier League fixture and then go and play a World Cup fixture 3 days later. But the point is, and this was what the Stoke City chairman was making on breakfast, if you're not careful, it disrupts 3 entire seasons because you have to adapt either side. It's the knock-on effect of when those fixtures that are lost are played. You could start a season early beforehand, finish one late at the other side. That is 3 Premier League seasons.
So is the world evolving around the Premier League, is it?
Well,
have we all got to adapt to what the Premier League says? No. There's other leagues in the world.
Ron, in Southampton, you were saying, wait, you were saying moving Wimbledon, what, to Milton Keynes? What are you saying here?
Let's move Wimbledon then from June till whenever, right?
Well,
we've got to do a place of fish.
Let's move the Grand National. I'll tell you what's rubbish, right? Having this World Cup, right, being organised for when they want to organise it now, when they bidded and it was bidded for someone else. That's what's rubbish. And what's rubbish is what I've heard from a lot of you people. It's ridiculous, right?
Go on, Rob.
It's absolutely ridiculous, right? It doesn't matter how much money they earn because it's not the international clubs that pay it. If they had any bottle, any of these international clubs, they'd all get together and say, right, we're not going.
Why not?
Nothing to do with the qualifiers. We're not going.
Why?
What do you mean why? I've just told you why. Because it's a ridiculous time to hold a World Cup.
No, it ain't. It's one season. Our $1 million, a lifetime of football is one season. Oh, it disrupts 3. Wow.
So right, once they do that, right, okay, it's nothing to do with that. They made a bid for the World Cup to be played when it's meant to be played, and now they're moving the goalposts.
They're not moving the goalposts.
Of course they're moving the goalposts.
They're keeping the goalposts in the same place. They're having a tournament at a different time.
Of course they're moving the goalposts because it's being
played somewhere
different.
Can you just clarify what it's got to do with Wimbledon and the Grand National?
Yeah, please.
Well, because I'll tell you what, that's like moving the tennis.
How is it? How is it though?
Oh, sorry.
How is it?
How is it? Well, it's quite simple, isn't it?
What other tennis is going on at the same time as Wimbledon?
As much as you like now, right? Okay.
This is the North-South divide. Right? Ron in Southampton and these two.
Listen, I'll tell you, at the end of the day, right, okay, this World Cup should be played when it's meant to be played, right? In the summer, it's been played in the summer ever since it's been created, right? And now, all of a sudden, we're suddenly meant to change it.
You play it in the Australian winter. The Australian winter, but, of course, the summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Thank you, Ron. Magnificent. Johnny in Oxford, last word, 30 seconds, Johnny, starting
no problem.
Now.
Yeah. Right, well, all of you have been debating heavily about this. I think we should just get used to it. FIFA rule the roost, and it's going to be played in the winter, so we need to carry on with the Premier League, give the young players a chance to play, let all the international players go away to the World Cup, and get some youth players in there, and also give a chance for teams like Burnley, to win a few games so that they might actually get up into the Champions League spaces.
Is that Rachel Burden putting on a different voice?
That's what she was saying earlier on. Thank you very much indeed, David Coleman, Barry Davis, John Motson, Alan Weeks, all those great voices.
The World Cup.
Tony,
that's why we're so passionate about this.
Tony Gubba, may he rest in peace. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, Nicky. A divorced woman's been told by a judge she can't expect her ex to support her for life and she should go and get a job. That might mean the rules could change. Whether you're the one giving the money or the one taking the money, because you might say you need it, do please call us, share your experiences. Did you have to start again and find your first job after a long marriage? Do get in touch.
First for breaking news and the best live is BBC Radio 5 Live.
It's 6 minutes past 9. We're going to speak to Andy Warshaw from Inside World Football. Good morning. Trevor Sinclair is back. Hi, Trevor. We're going to talk to Joel in Bedford. Hi, and Paul in Manchester. Good morning. Mark in Bristol. Welcome. Georgie's here. We're talking to everybody and you, hopefully, about this. Would you support a Christmas World Cup? That seems to be the scenario. A FIFA task force has recommended the 2022 World Cup in Qatar will take place in November and December. Morning, everyone. Joel, Paul, Mark. Joel, what do you think? Joel in Bedford.
Hi, Nicky. This is just the continuation of an argument that takes place every 2 years in the Premier League as well when the Africa Cup of Nations comes up. This is just a bigger scale.
Mm-hmm.
Our yardstick is what's good for the Premier League. And it's not even what's good for the fans. It's what's good for the broadcasters and their schedules. But it is plainly
ramifications of this.
Good morning. Well, the ramifications will be huge. I mean, I've listened to the listeners already intently, and some of the points are excellent. But don't forget, this is not about whether or not Qatar stages the World Cup. They won the vote. Some people might not think they should have done.
False pretenses?
There are obviously people who feel that. Now, but this is all about when the tournament is going to be staged. Clearly, what is, I suggest, pretty alarming is the fact that this decision to play in winter or to switch to winter has been taken over 4 years since the vote took place. Now, that in itself, I think, raises questions. But in terms of the ramifications, well, let me quote you what Howard May Nichols said. And just for the listeners, I'll explain who he is. Howard May Nichols is the Chilean official.
The whole thing is morally corrupt and wrong.
Mark in Bristol.
Well, he said everything. He said everything spot on. I mean, the point is, he's saying that it's a European problem. It's not a European problem at all. The World Cup has always been held during the summer, and everyone has built around the fact that it's been held during the summer. They have to conform to when the World Cup is. It's got nothing to do with that. When we bid for the World Cup, the World Cup is a summer. Now they're changing the goalposts. You can't do that. Everyone needs to bid again. There's no way Qatar can take the World Cup. No way. And it's all down to Sepp Blatter. Sepp Blatter hates England. And it's because England created football in its present format. And that's the nub of it.
Andrew Warshaw, from Inside World Football. What are the consequences? What are the ramifications? Morning, Andrew. What are the ramifications?
Ridiculous. We cannot live in an integrated world, a global village, as we would like to call it, at our convenience, and the only yardstick that matters are the yardsticks of European federations. This is our biggest problem, and it reflects the way we look at the world in just about, not only football, in just about everything.
But there's every single nation on earth represented in European football. It's the fulcrum of it all. It's the hub of it all, isn't it? Or is that very European-centric view?
It's a very Eurocentric view. The sun has set on the empire. And the issue is that We love Yahya Toure to be at Manchester City. We love Drogba to be at Chelsea. But when the Africa Cup of Nations come, then we want to have a collective moan and groan.
Interesting point. Paul in Manchester, no different from the African Cup of Nations, says Joel, very articulately, but just on a bigger scale. Paul?
I totally disagree. This will destroy world football, and I'll tell you why. I've got many reasons. Migrant workers, about 400 have been killed so far in building the infrastructure. There's a report out yesterday that 4,000 will die during the building of all these Qatar stadiums. Migrant workers are paid a pittance. Some of them are there. They cannot escape now once they're in Qatar. If Israel qualifies for the World Cup, no one on an Israeli passport is allowed into Qatar. So Israel will be banned from that World Cup.
Gays are Israel should be banned in the first place. You did it.
No. Oh, thank you. You just proved your point then. Thank you very much. Gays are criminalised. You're not allowed to drink in public or kiss in public. Michael Garcia has produced a report giving all the corruption that's been happening in Qatar. The European leagues will suffer because these players will come back on the 23rd of December. What's going to happen then? They're going to be injured. They won't be able to play on the Christmas fixtures. The whole thing is absolute disgrace. It should be played in the United States and Australia. Qatar have never qualified for a World Cup. They never will do. But the whole